Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Sebbing. Today we're going to be kicking off a Quiltmas in July. We're going to be bringing you 12 tutorials this month, spaced out throughout the month, of different project ideas that you can make for either decorations for the holidays or to gift. So some of them are going to be holiday specific, like today we're doing a placemat that you can make in holiday fabrics, or you can also make some summer ones. We've got some examples of that for you. Or we're gonna have some bag tutorials coming that are just quick and easy to put together, pretty inexpensive, and make great handmade gifts. So typically we do a 12 makes of Christmas in December, the first 12 days of the month. But we thought we were gonna switch it up this year and instead do this Quiltmas in July. It'll still be 12 projects, 12 ideas for you, but you've got the whole rest of the year to work on it. So we thought that that might be better for all of you at home who are maybe thinking ahead or maybe just, saving this for later. That's totally fine too. So make sure you check out all of our past 12 Makes of Christmas tutorials. There's so many ideas. I think this is our 5th year of doing it, so that's a lot of potential options for you. We always try to come up with things that can be done quickly and inexpensively. But we do have some longer projects too of quilts if that's something that you also are interested in. All right, so today we're going to start with some Quilt-As-You-Go placemats. We're going to be using a numbered Quilt-As-You-Go that comes from June Tailor. So it makes it really easy to sew together and super fast. So the kits that we're going to send out to you guys, we have 6 different ones. And we're going to take a peek at in just a second. But there's 6 different ones that you can choose from. 3 of them are from a Dear Stella line that we have behind me. So we split that up into 3 different colorways, and there's 3 different kits that are going to go with it. You also can grab yardage of this if you want to have some coordinating items or maybe a quilt to go with it. So it's super cute. We're going to take a peek at that. But also we have a couple that are fruit and plant based, so they will be great for summer or any time of the year to go on your table. Now keep in mind that your placement is going to be your placement, so you can make every single one look a little bit different to have a really fun collection of these, and each one can just have its own little flavor. So have fun with that as you work with this. It's really fun, really cute. We're going to start with the ones that are from our new Dear Stella holiday line that we got. We have split this, it's all one collection, but we split it into 3 different variations of sets. So you're going to get enough to do 6 placemats in each kit that you order. So if you have a big family, you can get one from each of the 3 variations and have 18 different placemats that all coordinate. So that would be really fun, especially if you're getting everybody together. That could just be a lot of fun there. This first one is the one that we're doing here in today's video tutorial. This is our 2nd variation. I know that for a fact. I could not tell you which one is 1 and 3, but we'll make sure to put it on the scroll below. This one is definitely more of that blue mint feeling, and this is one of my favorite Christmas combinations. I love these colors. These colors are in the home, and so it works really well with my everyday decor as well. This one is more of that red and green feel. So this one is the one that looks most like Christmassy. The other ones are definitely more just holiday-ish, but it's real fun. I love it when they include a little bit of mint in with that, especially with this lovely little binding that's super fun. And all of them have the same backing fabric of this. It's just a basic white on white that looks kind of like a snowflake or a starburst coming out. So this one's super cute. The holiday sweaters are always fun. That could make fun yardage to do something with if you want to have some ugly sweater projects that you want to work on. Now this one reads very blue. We have some really cute animals in this one if that's something that you are into. There are some Christmas cats. That's always fun. And we also have a fox and a seal and a penguin and some polar bears, and they all have different holiday attire on, so that is fun. So again, you can get one of these and you will get all the same fabrics. Like if you get this, you will get just these 5 fabrics, and they will all, you can make them all look a little different, but they will all be from these fabrics. Or you can get any combination of the 3 variations if you want to have 6, 12, and then 18, depending on how many guests you are expecting for the holidays. Now we're on to our foodie one. So this would be fabulous if you just really love like farmers market stuff and you want to have some fun with that for the summertime. This is great for the gardener. This was, I believe, a Pippa Shaw one. It has lots of vegetables in it. We have some gardening tools and it's just really bright and fun. And this one has a nice orange backing to that. And we had a nice little wavy line going for our stitch down binding on this one. So just really fun opportunities for this one if you don't want to hand stitch it because it's just a placemat. And no one's ever going to see the back. You can absolutely do that and make that work if you want. Now these two were from More Pie. That was a line that we featured for our Stashing with Stephanie Club earlier in the year. So this is like the Dear Stellas where we have two variations from the same collection. So if you want to mix it up, have more variety, then you certainly can do that too. You can make this work as well. And you can have 12 that all go together. And honestly, like there's no reason why you would have to just keep like 6 fabrics together, because you can see like for this one, there's no overlap in any of the fabrics that we are using for the inside. So you absolutely could use all 10 fabrics and have it be even scrappier. And you could use all 15 and make the Dear Stella ones that are holiday super scrappy too. You wouldn't have to just stick with our colorways, although you could if you wanted to. So here are our two variations for the More Pie. This one is super cute. It's the banana one, and we got some peaches, and then we have some pie sleep repeat. I could get down with that for sure. And if you did that kit, then you have a quilt that already goes with that. And this one definitely has more of a retro kitchen feel. This one is really fun. It's got our cherries. We have the very retro looking wood print. It's there. And then this reminds me of a quilt block, but in a very geometric way. And we got some bananas here too. Not quite the same as that banana. There's more fruits. We have some raspberries and some peaches and cherries on that one too. So here are two variations for the More Pie. Again, you can get one of these or both of them, and you have enough for a dozen, and you can have a lot of fun with that. I think this also makes great gifts for new brides, and because you know they're not going to have these things to decorate with. I know I made a bunch for me when I first got married, and I made some for my sister when she got married. That was just, it's a fun gift to do. So this could be fun for anyone who's like setting up house and they need a placemat to protect their table, and they're cute, they're fun. So super fast to put together, and we're going to get into the tutorial next. So we discovered all of the lovely Quilt-As-You-Go products that June Tailor has last year when we bought a cutting machine from them. It cuts our fat quarters and our yardage orders. You guys love watching video of it. So we found out about all their other products after we got that. And this one has been on our bucket list to do in a tutorial for a while. It's a Quilt-As-You-Go placemat. We have these really cool diagonals on the sides, and then we have some nice straight lines that are going to cover all your sins on the sides. And it's really nice because they're all numbered for you, so you know exactly what order to put them in, and it just goes really fast and is really easy to work with. So you're going to get in your pack, you're going to get enough fabric and a pack of batting that will get you a set of 6 of these. If you, like say you have a big family and you want to have Christmas placemats to work with that. And really they're very blue, so it could work just for holidays in general if you don't celebrate Christmas if you're Jewish. It definitely could work either way. But you could get one of each and end up with 18 of them and seat the whole dang family with all the coordinated placemats because they're all from the same line. It'll look fabulous. All right, so we're going to get going on this. One thing they recommend is that you do not iron until you are all done with this, because ironing can sometimes shrink batting. And so we're just going to press and kind of with our fingers and move things over as we're working on it. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to set this to the side, and I'm going to start by ironing my backing piece because this is very, very wrinkly. And if we don't get it out now, it's going to live forever, these wrinkles in the back. So we're going to press that real good first. So I'm going to take my handy dandy spray mister. You guys know about this. I talk about it all the time. I don't like using steam in my iron because every time I put water in it, it eventually shoots out gunk and ruins my iron and ruins my fabric. So what I use instead is spray mister. It sprays an aerosol mist. You can see it's no water droplets, just a fine aerosol mist over your fabric. And then when we press it, it's like the same effect of using steam, but we don't have water droplets and you don't have to risk ruining your iron. I mean, look at that. Look how good that looks. You can see how bad it was on the sides, but it looks really good on the center now. And while I have this out, I'm also going to spray all of my pieces that I've cut for the placemat. That way we are going to be good to go there. Now the first thing we're going to want to do is layer and baste. Now since we're quilting as we go, that means we don't have a top yet, but we do have our backing fabric and our batting that needs to go together. So first I'm going to lay that fabric right side up, and then we are going to lay the batting with the printed side up. That's important. We want that to make sure that we have plenty of space. And then you're going to smooth it from that center out. You want to make sure also that you're leaving a good amount of space on the sides here to the edges. So you can see here's the edge of my fabric and here's the edge of my line. I'm pretty good. Now I'm going to put some pins in this. If you're working on your dining room table, make sure that you put like a cutting mat underneath it so you're not gouging the top of it. These curved basting pins work great because what we can do is we can kind of rock in and then it will rock back out. And it just fits in there very nicely. Now I'm just going to put one of them in per number, kind of going up the center here. And that is going to allow me to kind of keep everything in place as we're working on this. One thing I'm going to do, I probably should have done this from the start, is I'm going to take a little painter's tape too. And I'm going to just kind of tape my edges down. As you can see how it's kind of like coming up a little in the center. I want it to stay nice and flat as I'm doing this. So I'm just going to tape the edge down on all four sides of my backing fabric. That will help keep everything in place long enough to get this layered and basted and keep it nice and flat. Oh yeah, that's much better. Now it's not moving around on me. I know that backing fabric is going to stay nice and straight as I work, so perfect. Now on these sides, I'm going to do 2 pins per number, one at the top and one at the bottom. All right, I can go ahead and peel my tape off, and now we're ready to start sewing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch all the way around the blue line that goes on the outside. This is going to do a couple of things. It's going to anchor everything down on the outside so it doesn't get bunched in too much. And then also it's going to give me a really good cut line later when we go to trim these down. So one thing you absolutely have to have is a walking foot. That is this weird looking contraction. It comes with a lot of sewing machines. It came with my super basic one. Even my really old super basic Singer came with one. And it has feed dogs on the top and the bottom. So what it's going to do is feed all your fabric layers through at an even rate so you don't end up with bunching on the back. So it's a really important thing. You absolutely have to have it in order to do this project. If your machine did not come with one, go to the place where you purchased your machine to see if you can get one that matches. Otherwise, you can check out a sewing machine repair shop near you and they probably can get you a universal one that will work with your machine. Now, another thing that's nice to have are these Machiners quilting gloves. You can see mine are very well loved. They get a little dingy on the fingers, but that does not transfer onto your fabric. I've used this on white quilts and it's been totally fine. It has these little grippies on the fingertips, which make it a lot easier on your shoulders and your wrists as you're pushing things through. I use this anytime I'm quilting on my home sewing machine or binding because it helps me just keep hold of everything without stressing my body too much. So gardening gloves are not the same. I know people try to be cheap and say that they are, but they are not. And honestly, gardening gloves at this point probably cost the same amount. So just go with these. They're fabulous. All right, so now we're about ready to get started here. So the one thing that may confuse you a little bit the first time you use one of the June Tailor Quilt-As-You-Go kits is these blue lines are placement lines for your fabric. They are not these sew-on lines. It's not like paper piecing where you sew on the lines. This is just where you put your fabric. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take my piece number 1 and we're gonna put it over here. And this is why my safety pin is right smack dab in the middle, because then I'm not going to hit it with my walking foot and I'm not going to sew over it. So we're going to place that down and I'm going to make sure that it is extending beyond my line for piece 9 and my line for piece 10, because that's got to get covered over eventually and end up in a seam allowance. We don't want it to be short. So we've got that there. I'm actually going to grab some pins and just pin that in place. All right, so I'm going to place a pin in a couple of places. I'm going to start on that end and then also go in the center. Remember, I'm trying to avoid my edges because I'm going to need to be sewing along those. We don't want to have to sew over pins or remove anything. All right, now that everything's numbered, we have to see where piece number 2 is, and that's right up here. So now I'm going to take piece number 2 and I'm going to arrange it right sides together with the one that we just had. Now here's where it takes a little bit of thought, because if I put this right on top of that and I flip it over, you can see that I'm not going to reach this corner over here. So what I want to do instead is arrange it a little bit, maybe offset, so that way when I flip it over, and you kind of, if you just hold your finger there, it kind of mimics a 1/4 inch seam. We want to make sure we're going to be covering over here and covering over here. And I think I can actually move that down quite a ways. And now you can see that I'm covering pretty well on this corner. And I'm also going over this edge here. So you kind of have to preview it, and that way it is like paper piecing if you've ever done that technique before. But this one, this way you're going to be able to just kind of see where you're at. The moral of the story is don't just place it even with the edges here, because then you might not cover, you might have to rip stuff out and redo it. All right, so now that I've got that figured out and where I want it to be, I'm going to go ahead and pin across just like I would if it were like a regular piece that I was doing, where I would be pinning across where that seam allowance is, because that's exactly what I'm about to do. All right, so now you want to know where your 1/4 inch is on your walking foot, because what we're going to do is we're still going to sew a 1/4 inch seam going along this edge, and then when we flip it over, this edge of the fabric should be nice and even with this line here. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready for that. All right, so you can see I've got my line going here. That is where my piece 9 eventually is going to cover that seam. So I'm going to start just a little bit before that, and I'm just going to go ahead and start sewing. Remove your pins as you come to them, but generally just try to maintain a 1/4 inch seam as you're stitching. And you actually can increase your stitch length to about a 3.5 because we're piecing, but we're also quilting as we go. So I've gone a little bit beyond, and I'm just going to go ahead and clip those threads and go from there. All right, so before we do anything, I'm just going to go ahead and flip this over and make sure that I'm at least meeting, if not exceeding, where this line is, and also that I don't have any gaps here, because sometimes it's easy to accidentally like get too close to the edge of your piece below and then you end up seeing batting here. We don't want that. So just double check that everything got caught over, everything is looking good. It is in this case, so that's fantastic. It is very important that you remember to remove these pins, because if you don't do it and we sew the next piece on, then that pin is going to be in there forever, which we do not want. It's going to knock your plate around. Not good. All right, so I'm just going to kind of press that over by hand, just kind of keep it out of the way for right now. Now, piece 3 is going to be on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this safety pin in for right now. And we're going to do this same process going this way. And then we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just do a nice little video montage, because the process is the exact same. Just we are working our way out, alternating from side to side until we get our entire center done. And then we'll come back when we get to this part. One thing, I always say we're going to do a video montage, and then I'm like, one thing, we got to do this. So we have some directional snowmen here. So I want to make sure, in addition to placing this, that if I want this to be my up, that I've got everything going up. So when I place this here, I'm going to make sure that when I flip it right sides together, that when I flip it over, my snowmen are going to be going up. So pay attention to things like that too when you're placing things, so that way everything is looking the way you want it to when everything's said and done. So we've reached now where we have pieces 9 and 10. This is where we're going to have some vertical strips going up and down. So one thing I want to make sure that I do, because we're not going to cut off these extra. You certainly could if you wanted to, like if you didn't want to have as much bulk, and I might actually go through and do a little bit of that. But I'm actually going to put a dark piece over here. That way, if we see any of this underneath, it's not going to be like the end of the world, because it's a nice dark piece as opposed to putting a light piece over top, and then you might get some shadowing from these dark strips underneath. If we instead go with a nice dark print, you're never going to see it. It's going to be fabulous. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim up just a little bit, just using some scissors just to get out a little bit some of the extra. That is optional. You don't have to do that. You could just go straight into stitching. So if we look, we can see that this line is extended well beyond. That way we can see pretty easily where it needs to be trimmed up. I'm just going to go about a 1/4 inch beyond where that is. And actually you can kind of see like where you've stitched out to. And I'm just going to trim off just a little bit as I go up through here, just so I don't have so much underneath. All right, so I didn't take a lot off, but I got some. It's a little straighter. It'll look good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this piece here. And remember, we've got a little line here. You can see it better, but you can see that it extends out beyond, both at the top and at the bottom. And if you need to, if you can't see it, you can also trim across the top so you can see a little better there. Again, just make sure that you are not cutting into where your placemat is eventually going to be. So now I can see this line here poking up a little bit, and I can see that now on all the sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and line that up with my placement line at the top and bottom. That gives me exactly where I need to be, and I can go ahead and put some pins in to keep that in place as I stitch it down. I'm also, as long as I'm here, I'm going to do the same thing on 10, and I can just do them both at the same time. All right, now I'm ready to stitch down both sides to get our sort of framing pieces on. All right, that is looking pretty good. It has framed it out nicely, and since we use a darker fabric, we don't see any shadowing from some of the pieces that are underneath there that are longer than your typical 1/4 inch. So since I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and take these pins out and sew our final sides on. Same process as before. Then we're going to move on to binding. Now, this is not my favorite way to cut down for binding and to do binding, but it is the best way to make sure all your placemats end up the same size. Now, this is how we do it when we are cutting down fabric covers too. So you can see we still have our lines here. You want to use those as our cut lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line that up with the top and bottom of the line. I can see it here and also down here. So what I want to do is then, once I have that in place, go ahead and just trim off my sides and excess. Now we're going to work our way around. I'm going to go ahead and trim this here, and I can see the line really clearly up here. I'm going to also move it so you can see the bottom here. So I can also make sure that I've got a square line here. So I've got a straight line even. And now I know I'm going to have a nice square corner because I took my time to line it up at the bottom and at the top. And if you just keep going around clockwise like that, you're going to be able to keep working so that way you can keep a nice even line here and up top and make that work. Now finally on this last one, this is where we're going to use our mat to measure. So we're going to line this up over here, get everything nice and in line, and then we're going to use our mat to measure, get it nice and lined up at the bottom and on the side here. And that we're going to be able to go straight up and down. I can see that this is coming in right at 12 3/4, and I've got that at 12 3/4 on top. So we're going to have a nice square placemat. Now, if you need a lesson on how to do continuous binding with miter corners, we have that in our beginner quilting series. We'll put a link to it in the eye and in the description down below. For this one, we're gonna do a little video montage as I sew this around. The only thing that I do a little differently with this one is because I haven't stitched all the way to the edge, I have pinned the sides down. That way I make sure that I'm gonna make it through all 3 layers when I'm attaching that binding to my outer sides. Top, not a big deal, that's all stitched through. That's not gonna be an issue. If you wanted to do additional quilting, you would wanna do it before you put the binding on, probably before you cut it down actually. But it's Quilt-As-You-Go. That's the beauty of it, is we have securely gone through all of our layers. Everything looks great. We're fine. And so we're going to have a pin in here forever because I sewed it in. Don't do as I say. Just, you know, it happens. It happens to the best of us. But yeah, definitely take those pins out. We got a little whoopsie there, and it'll just live in there. We'll know that this is the one I did on camera. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stitch around here. Do stay to the end of the montage though, because I'm going to show you how I use fusible web tape to glue the binding to the back of my placemat so it's a lot easier to stitch down by machine. I actually do this on all my quilts. I glue my binding down. It makes hand stitching a lot easier because you're not fiddling with folding it over. It's just glued down and good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this down here. All right, if you made it through the video montage, then you know that we're gonna do some glue down binding here. Now, this is not a permanent solution. This is just something that is going to help you get things to be in place long enough to either like stitch them down by hand or by machine. So I'm gonna pull about 2 lengths of this off, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a pull. And what I do, it comes in 2 widths. We've already used the thinner of the widths. That's perfect for going under, but you just get double when you have the thicker width here. And I think the other width is 3/8 and this one's 5/8 or something like that. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna fold it over so we have a nice manageable thing. And usually I actually use my ruler to go straight down the center of this. I'm gonna eyeball it because all of our rulers have walked away. I'm not sure where they are at the moment. And the one I just used is being utilized at the moment. So I'm gonna eyeball here. Just use my rotary cutter to go down the center. All right, I think that'll give me enough to go around this. If not, I can always cut a little more. All right, so I'm gonna flip everything over so that the right side is down. And I'm also flipping my corners up. This is a small piece, so we don't have a lot to work with. I usually just do one side at a time if I'm doing this for a quilt. All right, so we're gonna pull this apart here. And we're gonna zoom in so you can see exactly how I do this. This is awesome. I used to do this like all the time, just so that we can like get a quilt to look finished and we don't have to sit and hand bind it because there usually isn't time for that, especially for our subscription club, Stashing with Stephanie quilts. But my team, who usually actually ends up doing the hand binding for them, prefer this. So they, even when we don't need it like done to photograph first, I still do this just because it's easier on your hands. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to place this right on top where that area is going to be where we're going to fold our binding over. I'm putting it right up into the corner. Now I'm going to fold it over so that I create that 45-degree line. And I always start just by putting my iron, getting that section in place first. Then it kind of takes a second for it to cool and for everything to really hold and be in place. So I'll kind of hold that first part down a little bit while I'm working on getting the rest. And this allows me to get a nice straight look on the back. And one of the things that, like if you ever get your quilt judged, that they might be picky about is they want the edge to fully fill your batting. So when you fold that over, you do not want to have like any extra. Like you should be able to feel that your batting goes all the way out to the edge, but hasn't been pulled back. It's very much a feel thing. Hard to explain on video, but if you feel a gap or a hump here, you haven't done it quite right. So now I'm just going to keep working my way down as I do this. I usually only go about, 2-3 finger widths down. I'm doing a couple inches at a time, but it works really, really well. I'm really able to just get that laid down, and it looks so neat and tidy from the back, and it still is loose. Like right here, you can see there's still play here, so you can still like play around with that as you're stitching it down and make everything work as you're going by hand later. All right, so when you get to the corner like this, you can just tear it. It works really easily. And we're gonna start to make that miter. So we got that down, that's looking good. I'm gonna turn it, and we're gonna take and put, I don't wanna overlap here, I just want it right next to where we are at here. As we're gonna fold this down. And I'm gonna do my best to place it so that that miter of the corner is even with where I stopped. And because there is wiggle room, because that fusible tape is right up in here, this is still open, so we can adjust it when you're going back through and hand binding later if you want it to be absolutely perfect. So it's not like it's a there forever kind of a thing. This will totally work, and you can still make a few adjustments here and there. All right, so I'm gonna keep working my way around until I made it all the way, and then I'm gonna show you how you can either use this to hand bind or do a decorative stitch or stitch in the ditch to get your binding secured. All right, so I've got my binding totally glued down to the back of the side. You can see it is really on there good. We've got our miters as in place as we can, and we are ready to do the next step. So that is up to you how you want to finish it. I personally really love the look of hand binding, and I do that for all of my quilts, or I pay my team to do it for all of my quilts while they watch Netflix. But that's how I love it for that. I do hand binding if I'm doing something like a hanging pot holder where you're going to be seeing the front and back, so you can see like our long handle of a mitt. When you watch that tutorial, I hand bound the whole thing. But I do draw the line at things like placemats and mug rugs, because whoever is examining this is not going to see the back side ever. They're going to look at the front side. So I think that this is a really good occasion to where if you do not want to hand bind this, it's okay. And that's why I really like using this Heat and Bond Super Hem for this. Is one, it's ready to hand bind. I got everything in place. It's going to hold still and keep my miters, and it just is easier on your hands. But if I want to go around and stitch it by machine too, I don't have to worry about losing where everything is supposed to be, because it's really easy for things to kind of move around, especially on your corners when you're doing that. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just stitch in the ditch, but you also can really pick a decorative stitch to go around as well. This is a great opportunity to play with the stitches that came on your machine that you maybe don't get to use all the time if you're a quilter. All right, so if we're going to stitch in the ditch, our goal is to stitch right down where this binding is meeting our actual placemat, so that way it looks invisible from the front. So I've got that all set up. I'm still using that 3.5 stitch length. And I'm just going to stitch real slow into that corner. That way I don't go too far beyond, and that's looking real good. That's looking very invisible. All right, so this looks really good. You can barely even see where that stitching line is even if we turn it and we're on the dark side, it really barely shows as long as you take your time and you're going right in where that piece is. But like I said, this is also a really great opportunity to have some fun with those decorative stitches. As you can see that we picked one that kind of looks like snowflakes and went all the way around. And that also looks really cute and really intentional. And both of them look great from the back. They look very tidy, very neat. All the corners are in place because of gluing that down first. I think that works a lot better than clips, and then you don't have to take the time to like make sure everything is absolutely perfect. You just know that it is because you've already gotten it down there. Well, thank you so much for watching this tutorial with me. Remember, we have kits available for all of the new Dear Stella holiday lines, and they are very like just holiday, plain holiday time. So whether you celebrate Christmas or not, this 100% is going to work for you and your holiday decorating. And then we also have those ones that are more food-based and are perfect for summertime. So make sure you check out all those kits. They are available while supplies last, and we do have coordinating yardage as well if you want to make a couple other things with it as well. So make sure you check those out. We also, if you want to use your own fabric, we do have some extra of the Quilt-As-You-Go kits, so you can grab that and have some fun. All right, well, stay tuned because we have a lot more of our Quiltmas in July, our 12 tutorials that we're going to be bringing to you this month to give you some ideas of things you can make for decor for the holidays, or like smaller projects that make great gifts that are inexpensive and you can make quickly. All right, well, thanks so much for following along, and until next time, happy quilting.